This video is sponsored by KnucklesOX, Baba Snake, and Julio the Boy. The first order of business as we resume our tale is fixing the Krillin's relationship status mistake made on my end last part. Thank you for all the corrections. Krillin would definitely be with 18 by this point, so we can go with my idea of giving Zangief the 18 treatment, but with Yamcha instead being the one interested in her, and most likely not having a ton of success courting her immediately. This isn't a major consequence though, because it's not really a story centered around this change to give it the time it deserves. But who knows, she could be a strong fighter for Buu to absorb during the arc later on, or she could simply ride the bench like most of the other characters outside of the filler, for example. Thus, for what we're worried about, the events of the Buu Saga begin to play out with the fallout of Piccolo, Goten, and Trunks' growth in this timeline, alongside what happened with Bojack last time. This means that Gohan has been given a slight warning that he has begun to lose a lot of the strength he worked so hard to cultivate, and more than likely as a response, will begin light exercise and daily training to avoid this as much as he can, in order to, if nothing else, maintain all the power he gained for the battle itself, and possibly further polish it, or if manageable, just barely get a tad stronger than that, so that he is not left behind. Gohan is also extremely likely to try to engage himself in at least some of the training with Piccolo, Goten, and Trunks, or at the very least, still Goten in his spare time like he did in canon, and possibly as a further push, Piccolo if he can squeeze a bit of extra time outside of his studies, making it wholly possible for him to grow stronger than in canon by this point as well. Vegeta has been given an early and stark example of Trunks' potential, and likely attempts to reignite the difficulty of his own training even further than he went in canon, also likely attempting to snag Trunks away from his training with Piccolo, or possibly draw the Namekian into it at the very least witness his training, which also brings up the interesting discussion of the impacts Vegeta joining in on this training could have, as he is more knowledgeable on the development of Saiyan specifically, and in this canon would have a much firmer and faster formed interest in the development of present Trunks, as much like his future counterpart, the boy would have simply earned his father's respect. Involvement for Vegeta and Goten's training as well has always just been an interesting prospect, as has involvement of Gohan in training up Kid Trunks, mostly because these are just ways in which you can make the timelines of Dragon Ball kind of rhyme in a way. And beyond that, with this timeline's versions of Goten and Trunks, there's a lot more to work with, and to benefit from the working with, to really change the timeline even further, as this means just about every one of the main Z fighters who will be relevant in the coming story arcs will receive a major boon, including Goku, who would have spectated at least the big moments of this timeline, like Bojack's invasion, and trained hard in excitement for them. Gohan becomes the Great Saiyan Man and either meets Videl again now, or they reunite, with Videl recognizing him from the tease of her getting an earlier glimpse from just the Cell games, and the longer one from the Bojack incident. So he is invited to the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament, with many fighters deciding to enter as well, and even Goku deciding to use a 24-hour pass with fortune teller Baba to attend. Everyone is excited to see him, recognizing him instantly in contrast to the last Tenkaichi Budokai he attended and competed in, while also showing the differences the passage of time has made. It is Goku who this time doesn't recognize Gohan, on account of how much he has grown as both a young man and a young warrior. And when seeing him next to Goten, whom Goku would have only seen a few times when peering into the world of the living passively, it is almost possible for him to mistake his youngest son as a new version of himself, or maybe even Gohan's child, on account of how strong he can tell they've both become, making him very proud and excited to test their strength. From here, the timeline begins to seem as if it is matching with canon very well, including Goten and Trunks being very dismayed by the prospect of the children's bracket. Though here, with them being closer to Piccolo, I actually think he will be able to both preempt and dissuade them from their Mighty Mask antics, both because it is troublesome, but also because it will make a mockery of the competition, and the many people and fighters who have trained and worked hard in anticipation for the tourney, including himself. Thus, the actual Mighty Mask will remain in the bracket, while Krillin would no-sell Pentar even hard in the first match. Outside of these changes, however, things are very recognizable, until the point Piccolo, or Ma Jr., faces off a Supreme Kai, or Shin. Here, Piccolo is still majorly put off by him, but because of the great deal of strength and confidence he's achieved through the ripples of this timeline, he's less scared to compete, and further dedicates himself to testing out what's up with his Kaibo himself, allowing a rather large change to happen. As they battle, the two begin to engage in telepathic dialogue, which when things check out is true, Piccolo eventually deems to let the others in on, as he is warned of Babidi's possible attack on the tourney, and why the Supreme Kai is here. As the two strategize together, it is decided that Shin will take a dive, while Piccolo advances to keep up the appearances of the tournament, bringing the Kai up and allowing him to maintain his anonymity as if he weren't here, though in reality, he's warned the Z fighters better than he did in canon. Meanwhile, Videl and Spopovich may be next, but depending on how strong the Videl of this timeline could grow as a result of the changes so far, it is entirely quite possible for Hercule reading alone to be so enticing that she may be the first person to have her energy drained from Master Babidi, though it is also possible for the fight to go extremely similar as it did in canon, since Spopovich was motivated by his grudge against Mr. Satan as much as Babidi's power. Though again, simply because of her power, it would likely be toned down to Videl either edging out a victory, even if she is pretty beaten up or drained in the process, or simply going down in a somewhat similar fashion to canon. In fact, if this could be done slyly enough, Spopovich could try to be truly vindictive in an attempt to work his way through the entire bracket to Hercule, and he would simply need to attempt to conceal his use of the outside tool to drain Videl's energy by working with Yamu, and then vice versa. That way, they can advance in the tourney and conceal their true goal until it's far too late. Regardless, Gohan, due to his feelings for Videl, would still secure her senzu bean, I think, even if she doesn't need to eat the entire thing. From here on out, these separate ideas in conjunction could change things quite a bit, the most major being that Gohan's greater strength displayed in match number 4 would be an even bigger surprise, and a larger reason to break at least some composure of the tournament, with Yamu likely sacrificing at least his spot for a chance to drain Gohan and retreat. However, like in canon, this is still allowed to happen, as it sends Yamu darting off, disqualifying him, and advancing Jewel into the next round without a contest. In stark contrast to canon, however, Spopovich would display a minor amount of greater ego, having been swayed by his new ambition to work his way up to revenge against Hercule himself, and thus, he will stay, giving me a blatant excuse to not tear the tournament bracket apart completely. At the same time though, it really doesn't matter as we're shown in canon. I mostly just think it'd be fun to let this Gohan dog walk Spopovich in the 10th match. This is where the next major change would come into play, since with so many of the adult parties still wanting to finish the tournament, and the fact that we thankfully already have multiple heroes on standby already, with the Supreme Kai ready to follow as well as the stronger version of Adele, if nothing else, since the others can join as the tourney winds down. But most importantly, Goten and Trunks will be free and ready to go, since they've done nothing but watch others fight since the end of the children's bracket so far, in which Trunks still kinda dissatisfyingly won by cheating. And beyond that, after assessing the situation himself and asking them to go, it will be clear that Piccolo is trusting them to handle this problem, despite its dire stakes, the way he once talked about trusting in Gohan when he was only a kid, as Vegeta and the Saiyans were invading, or when fending off Cell and the androids. This would therefore inspire the boys to take this seriously and act like adult Z-fighters, and hopefully calm Chi-Chi and Bulma down, as much as it reasonably could, before they would too go off towards the more dangerous action, while Kibito too likely forfeits to follow them. And while we're at it, if she had prior warning, Android 18 would likely have formatted her plan to bribe Mr. Satan far earlier, meaning she could also go, if only as a favor to Chi-Chi and Bulma as fellow moms. And if we simply need babysitters, Yamcha and Zangief come up again as names that are great choices. This means we would actually get to jump directly to Goku and Vegeta's match, which I can't imagine the duo having any complaints about, as they had already made all the agreements about the stipulations of the fight, though we'll check back in just a second. As with our other heroes, Shin and Kibito may have more hesitation than in canon with their initial team this time, but I actually think it would probably be lessened if Piccolo framed sending the boys out to handle this issue, as the two of them truly being the future strongest under the heavens, and thus, the objectively correct choices to handle this evil wizard Babidi and stop him from achieving his goals. Though as there is a wily and dangerous Demon King to deal with still, here I could actually see it being either Videl, Yamcha, or 18, taking one for the team and inadvertently protecting the others, as the one to become encased in the stone spit first, meaning if it is 18, she and Krillin really trade places here. This however sets off the battle between everyone in Babidi's forces, as they pursue them into the ship and the battle is on. As the current lead fighters, the boys Goten and Trunks are on the same page like most times, so they don't mind just sharing opponents and blowing through the likes of Pui Pui and Yakon faster than the adults would have in canon, by wasting time trying to evenly divvy up the bad guys like cookies, even though in the end, they're all small fries, simply as per the changes of this timeline. Meanwhile, Videl and the others would likely enjoy a more fitting and familiar challenge for her, and as strong as she could be here, she would do well taking on any of the lackeys of Pui Pui's race who got in their way until the match of Dabura will begin. As we've already established that Goten and Trunks here would be at least worth a Cell Saga Gohan each, Dabura unfortunately has little chance of winning this fight, unless he just plays it far dirtier and more cunning than he ever has, making him pretty overtly wish he had brought something he calls a third eye, before he begins resorting to exclusively trying to turn the boys to stone. Though this would make his attacks a bit too predictable, and thus, Goten and Trunks could capitalize, pulling off a combo move that makes Dabura bite his own tongue and get his stone spit on himself, in order to be left wide open before he is subsequently locked out and through a couple walls of the ship to the room hiding Babidi in the egg. Meanwhile, back at the tourney, unfortunately for Vegeta, because of both the stipulations of trying to stay away from the Super Saiyan forms, Ki Blast, and even Flight, as well as the fact that Goku is far more familiar with the rule set of the Tenkaichi Budokai, I think even with the changes for Vegeta presented in the timeline, Goku would almost certainly win the match against Vegeta, likely somewhat unfairly, with the ring out possibly, leaving both Saiyans rather unsatisfied with their bout, despite it being a rather spectacular match from them both in Earthling standards. But since they know they can both go even further beyond, they both end up quietly lamenting the fact that that they only had these 24 short hours to fight one another again. But even so, because they at least got to get directly to their fight, they are better able to accept that what is simply is here. And so regardless, with this result now freeing Vegeta up to go and join the situation with the boys, he departs as agreed, and in better spirits than his canon counterpart would be. After this, Mighty Mask would take on Killer in a match that's somehow more anticlimactic. So tossing a coin, I have decided to give this to Mighty Mask, advancing him beginning the next round with Piccolo vs Krillin. Unfortunately for him, though I love Krillin and think he would grow incredibly strong in this timeline compared to his canon counterparts, I do think he would be defeated, though he also may be eager to go after 18 of the others. Meanwhile, Gohan would beat the brakes off of Spopovich to avenge Videl, which would likely endear Mr. Satan to him very quickly in this timeline. Then, after Spopovich is carted away, Mr. Satan takes on Goku in a fight that feels a lot more akin to Goku trying to train the champ up, and also likely reminiscing about some of his antics in the Cell Saga, and how big a help he ended up being. So in the end, I think Hercule would cleverly find a way to frame his forfeiting the match as a heartwarming cover story about him just wanting a father and a son to enjoy their special reunion in the tournament, making him root for Goku and Gohan, or the Great Saiyan Man, to make it all the way and for one of them to become the new temporary champion, since hopefully they wouldn't be competing in the 26th tournament. Again advancing Goku unsatisfyingly for him, while Mr. Satan is cheered for almost as hard as when he defeated Cell. And so flipping the coin again, I would once again pick Mighty Mask over Drool, snapping the fight right back to something genuinely interesting in Piccolo vs Gohan at the Tenkaichi Budokai, which I feel will be an all-time classic match, likely having a lot of similar tones to their training for the Tournament of Power, but more in the lines of Piccolo first taking to see how much power Gohan may have lost out on, and then likely being surprised and put on the back foot, since once he caught up, as long as he kept training, Gohan could easily surpass the new benchmark set by Piccolo and the others, even if he did so more discreetly and in his spare time, or while he studied, as their match turns into an almost direct runback of the original fight between Son Goku and Vegeta at the 23rd Budokai. Though here, with the ring taking nowhere near the damage, and with Gohan showing far more raw power than his father did, as well as the brutal cunning of the Demon Clan style, as he is able to score a 10-second knockdown on Piccolo and advance himself to the finals, making his original master very proud, before he as well leaves to check on the Babidi situation. Next, Goku obviously defeats Mighty Mask to join Gohan in the finals, and while the only real match he's had so far, the one with Vegeta, may have been a tad disappointing at the end, I think spiritually, this will be the fight that Goku is the most excited for, if not simply on account of how he left things with Gohan during the Cell Saga, the match likely being a great deal of fun for them both, but also some much needed bonding after 7 years of separation, as this bout would also act as a fulfilling catharsis to the events that resulted in Goku's death, and which made Gohan feel very guilty, and may have even added to trauma that further deterred him from training. As for who the winner is, once again, under the conditions of tournament rules and no transformations and such, I could see it as a toss-up, since Goku is Goku, but Gohan's potential in this story specifically is a bit easier to tap into and capitalize on. So I would like to say that Gohan would probably come out on top, even if we need to pull off a somewhat 20-second tourney style conclusion for that to be the case. Or maybe a conclusion along the lines of the other world tournament, where Goku is the loser because in the heat of the enjoyment of the battle, his heel or something is made to clearly skim the grass of the audience barrier, while Gohan in contrast very astutely tries to keep this in mind, despite also having fun reuniting and fighting with his dad. The fight would be so incredible in fact that the announcer would have trouble finding a spot to cut in and mention the DQ. In the end either way, Goku and Gohan would come out of the fight proud and satisfied, as the tournament would just be for fun. So with it not being consequential, what exactly happened with Buu? Well, unfortunately, Babidi isn't a complete fool, and would have recognized that Spopovich never returned, likely seeing him hone in on the later fights of the tournament as other great sources of killing and bloodshed, meaning with the energy siphoned from Gohan and Videl, as well as any Babidi may have devised a way to take when, say, Gohan was beating up Spopovich, that's all free for the taking. And thus, Buu was indeed freed. However, the result was unexpected. Instead of a depraved monster, a large pink jolly creature is released, and for the most part, he is honestly quite reasonable, despite the Supreme Kai's throwing a fit. The first to point this out of course being Trunks, in a rather disrespectful manner, but this interaction would possibly lead to Buu befriending the Z-Fighters, like Goten, Trunks, and Videl, before he gets a chance to meet B and Mr. Satan, with this going exceedingly well, on account of how Piccolo's updated training/babysitting style has taught Goten and Trunks how to mix the use of their fighting power and imaginations to play different kinds of games. However, this all takes a turn when Dabura reawakens and gets an order from Babidi to target Buu and the Earthlings, so that he will learn his place and obey them. In the process, Babidi makes his final mistake far sooner than in canon, since thankfully, while Goten, Trunks, Kibito, and Supreme Kai are strong enough to withstand this, Videl, 18, Yamcha, and Zangief are critically injured, enraging Buu and unlocking something dark within him, as a second far more evil version of the creature emerges and feasts upon the originator, before subsequently destroying Babidi and Dabura with nothing but a minor hand gesture and a guilty flash. Then when the dark deed is done, the creature begins to transform again into something far more horrible and closer to the danger that Supreme Kai was trying to describe and avoid. Despite the power of the other Z fighters who are arriving one by one, this new Super Buu is stronger than anything they have faced so far, and even displays the ability to absorb the powers of others, not unlike Cells, but vastly enhanced. As Android 18 and Krillin end up lending to the evil Gen's power and ego, as now all of a sudden after absorbing the married couple, it is cooler, more cunning, and seemingly in love with itself, with things beginning to look dire until the likes of Vegeta and Piccolo arrive. For a while, these two appear as if they will be able to turn the tides, since Vegeta has a lot of pent-up aggression from the tournament to let out, and Piccolo, as an immensely strong fuse being in his own right, somewhat knows how to identify when Super Buu means to call on the power and techniques of those he absorbed, and beyond this, the duo have learned to work together somewhat. But this is all for naught when Vegeta pushes the likes of Goten and Trunks out of the way to avoid them being absorbed, giving Super Buu Vegeta the edge to begin overpowering and absorbing Piccolo, who for a moment seems as if he is beginning to regret his decision to endure the tournament and leave things to the next generation. But instead, trusting in the students he decided to train earlier in this timeline, Piccolo encourages that he's sure Goten and Trunks will end this, as he's absorbed as well, and Buu becomes truly unstoppable seemingly. His power now noticeable enough that even if the tournament hadn't come to an end, the other fighters likely would have come. But before they can enter the fray, Supreme Kai attempts to dissuade them from engaging and giving the enemy any more power, while Goku explains having a plan and simply needing to buy time to enact it, getting Gohan to try and hold off Buu while he shows the boys how to do a special technique he learned in the other world. That said, however, with the changes presented in their discipline and control thanks to Piccolo, it would probably be overall too easy for Gohan and Trunks to master the Metamorph fusion dance, about as easy as slipping on earrings for example. So changing the timeline immensely here if only for the sake of it, let's find a way to logically go that route, since I do believe Kibito and Shin weren't actually aware of how Potara worked until meeting the Yokai. What if instead this fusion was totally by accident, or maybe as a result of something very good deep inside Buu, say because of the bonding between the supposed heinous Buu and the young Z warriors, since Kibito and Shin were there after all, and Buu could easily recognize the trinkets hanging from their ears and become curious, as he might bluntly ask the Kais what their funny jewelry is about, since he likes it, to which they would stiffly, and rather ignorantly, reply that they are mere symbols of great significance to the Kais. In a slight mockery of this, I could then see Buu spit out the Potara that once belonged to the Grand Supreme Kai, as he technically still has them on him, gifting them to Goten and Trunks, so they can match their friends, since they are after all much stronger and more fun to play with than the others, or something else seemingly childish and innocent like that. By nature, Goten, like his father, would find this a bit cooler and funnier than Trunks, who may think the earrings lame, but I don't actually think he'd throw his away, simply and coolly stowing in his pocket as a trinket to add to his master toy collection later, which may sadden Buu initially. But then, when the fight with Super Buu happens, and really becomes dire, the boys could attempt to reach their new friend by reminding him of the fun they had, and his gift to them, prompting Trunks to put his Potara on and show it off, so he can prove to Buu that he does care and value his friendship and his gift, unknowingly in the process, activating the magic earrings, as suddenly, Goten and Trunks fly and smash into each other in a swirling burst of light and energy, while every remaining and arriving Z-fighter from the end of the tournament wonders what this new power could be, and if it will somehow save them, as a never-before-seen warrior takes to the battlefield and begins questioning what he should call himself. But that's where we'll be leaving this story off for right now.